Okay, welcome everybody to our next speaker series. I'm here with Missy Kai Hoffman, right?
Yes.
But you like to okay. First question: why Kai?
Actually, that's my middle name. It's the name that my father gave me.
Birth
It
name.
means ocean in Hawaiian, and he grew up a big surfer and very connected to the ocean. So I think it's just a little easier to roll off the tongue than Missy Hoffman. It's like it's a lot. So yeah, I in like middle school, my friends used to say like Missy Kaye, like Yippee Kaye a lot. So it just kind of stuck from there.
Yeah, no, I just know that it rolls off my tongue whenever I
Yeah.
bring you up or speak about you,
Missy
and
Kai.
you're like, yeah, that's Missy Kai. Yeah. Well, I know I get it. My full last name is hyphenated Ort dash Ulm, and so trying to like explain that away is just I'm Ulm, you know.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Just condense it.
Just
But
condense it. Yeah. Okay, so so I'm really excited to have you on. I'm so happy you said yes. Whenever I think of bodywork as a practice, like an all-encompassing practice, and I know we've talked about this before. Whenever I think of bodywork as a practice, I think of you. You really are like an inspiration to me and like a whole host of body workers, because I generally think you're doing it right. And
thank you.
and I'm just glad to have you on. Tell us about the Body Intuitive. Tell us about what amalgamation of things that you brought into your practice led to putting the Body Intuitive together, and tell us where you're at with your practice now.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try to answer as briefly as I can for you because I know we have other questions. And thank you so much for that intro, by the way. It really means a lot to me, and I'm very honored. So I'll share as much as I can with you today. And I apologize if sometimes my answers are long. It's like I try to just get out a lot of information.
That's okay. The longer the better.
I get excited about
the longer
things,
the better.
So,
the longer the better.
If it's like, if you have any questions about any specifics, like please by all means feel free to interrupt me. Yeah, so just to give you insight into what I do and what the Body Intuitive is, I specialize in creating personalized treatment plans using a variety of holistic healing methods. And I really tailor those treatment plans to each individual and what they need in their own unique situation, their own body. And body work is one of my primary modalities, and it's one of my students' favorite modalities that we use together. And I use it quite a lot, especially at the beginning of our treatment. The goal and purpose of my students working with me is that they learn how to do their own personalized treatment plan on their own. And so for me, massage therapy is just one tool in a big bucket of tools to bring somebody through a rehabilitative or preventive treatment to the point where they can be self-sustaining and empowered to do these kinds of practices on their own. But I do see a lot of complex and severe cases, and a lot of cases who have a trauma background of various types of trauma, including sexual trauma, psychological trauma, like just all kinds of things. And so for me, it's really important that I offer more immediate relief for them in the first few stages of working together. And I feel like people understand and know something. They know massage as something that is desirable, right? And nobody's like, oh, don't massage me, unless they're very touch averse, which is also, something I can work with. But generally, people really like getting massaged. And so that I've realized that massage therapy is best integrated as a tool within a holistic treatment plan, where I use it both as an assessment tool and as a treatment tool. So like when I'm first working with a new client, I will do, for example, like a mobility assessment and then bring them on the table for like a longer 90-minute session. And so I'll have also the range of motion and the palpation to see where treatment is needed the most. And then we'll have like a follow-up call, and I'll tell them and explain exactly what I saw and I felt and what I think we should do. And usually that program includes at the beginning some kind of body work or release, manual release, and then I try to move them as quickly as possible into their own practices, because that's really where the gold is for the
Yes.
student.
Yeah, and I love how you said that, like build upon the relief that is, you know, needed in the apparent moment,
Yeah.
and then it's really how can we structure that the aftercare,
Yes.
because yes, it actually helps to get rid of the preconception of massage as a luxury. And I say massage because I'm only keying on one part of bodywork there, but
Right.
like we do see that so often where it's like I'm just coming in for that one session that I was like gifted,
Yeah.
and we don't realize that, like it's like, oh no, we can really do a bang up job. We can really knock out we can really give you relief here. And we can set you up for success down the road. And then other stuff can, you know, come up and be worked with from there. Specifically emotionally, because, you know, bodywork is a check-in with the physical
Yes.
and the emotional.
It
So
is.
why do you, so tell us, give us a little insight into maybe how you structure a treatment plan, because I know you use several different, you use expressionist, you use yoga, bodywork, expressionism, dance, you have a
So
coaching,
much.
yeah,
I know,
you
it's
have a
like,
coaching atmosphere. So like how would you structure
what
a
do I
treatment plan?
do? What am I actually doing? I ask myself this all the time. Like, how do I explain what I do? So where I'm at right now, and this will always be an evolution for me, as it will for all body workers, I'm sure, because, you know, our work is very much an outward expression of who we are as people and healers. Anyway, so my like zone of genius and where I really like thrive and have the most fun in my practice is on the rehabilitative side. So my background, you were asking about my credentials and stuff, is mostly in yoga therapy.
Yeah.
I went to LMU, Loyola Marymount University, and I really wanted the top tier training for there because they do a really good job of taking an integrative approach of being like, okay, you have to learn the Western medical science and anatomy and all of that. And so my teachers and that were not just yoga teachers, they were world-class chiropractors, they were internists at UCLA, they were, you know, people who have been working in the field for 20, 30 years. And yeah, the content was a little dry, but it was really, really informative, because I am now able to practice up to like a world-class clinical level and have conversations with those people that are meaningful, and I can kind of speak their language. And also I got this great exposure to the Eastern holistic side and approach of doing things. And I, in my own journey, have been really touched and blessed by practices of Ayurveda. So I just became a enthusiastic student and just kind of picked up on some things from there. So yeah, so then I started seeing clients in the yoga therapy world and holding that service out formally. And then I realized, you know, some things were kind of missing from my understanding and education, even though I had a really good start. So then I went into rehabilitative mobility specialization. So that's very similar to physical therapy, but it's more targeted and focused in that we're really looking at the structure and the functioning and the range of motion within the joints themselves. And so that's how I'll usually do my mobility assessment test, is based on that system. And then once I get somebody on the table, it gives me more insight into their nervous system functioning, their breathing patterns, and how certain things might be connected. And more importantly, it gives them that same understanding, because you know, I can sit here and explain all day to someone what's going on in their body, but if they don't make sense of it in their own bodies, if they don't feel it like actually in their body, then you know, they're buying in on the basis of their trust instead of their own experience. And so I want my students to buy in based on their own experiences. So with that all being said, around that time too, this was like 2017, 2018, I've been doing this for a few years now. That's when all of these like sexual abuse and harassment cases were coming out against these
Yes.
really big yogis.
Yep.
And a lot of the doctors that I was learning from said, you basically need a license to touch people. Like, you can't touch people without having a legal basis for it. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I should go to massage therapy school.
Mm-hmm.
And actually around that time I was going to Lightning in a Bottle festival, and I got brought on as a healer within like their Zen Den sanctuary there.
That's where that's actually, I'll let everyone know that's where I met you. That's that we were in the sanctuary. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just was such a beautiful experience because it brought like so many badass people together, and badass healers. And so anyway, so that is actually where I was really inspired, because at the festival, people were really asking for a lot of massage, and I'm like, oh, there's something to this. And they like, I would have people come back to me at the festival like 3 times. And I feel like at a festival, that's really like, you have to want to do that.
That's right.
Like everybody's attention is
it's like a 3-day festival. You've seen me all 3 days.
I know, like literally. And I was just like, okay, so there must be something here, right? And so I kind of just like followed that magical pixie dust, and it ended up being just a really beautiful offering to supplement with what I was already doing. And so I feel like, and then from there, because Bodywork is very emotional, like you said, a lot of things would come up for my students. And so, we'd sit down after the session, be like, oh, how was it, blah, blah. And it ended up being like a 20-minute conversation. They start opening up about their relationships, their sex life, blah, 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 like intimacy issues, like all of these things. And I think for certain populations, they are very touch deprived in general,
yes.
Especially men in their everyday life. Yeah. And so they're like looking for an outlet. And so that's why I created the formalized soft sex coaching outlet. So it's like, it's not about me, and like I can hold that relationship and that space for us, but it's for a therapeutic purpose for them to come more into their own in a somatic way, right? So everything that I do, the dancing, the coaching, the body work, the mobility, is to get people more connected to their bodies and feeling into their bodies so they can release pain, work their way through trauma, develop better coping skills, and ultimately develop their own personalized practice that anchors them throughout their everyday life. Because people don't come into me because they want 20 more degrees of shoulder flexion.
Right, right.
It's like, who cares really at the end of the day? It's like what the shoulder flexion allows you to do. Like if you love lifting weights, if you love playing basketball, like that's the motivation. And so that's how I try to explain to my students, like this is a long-term practice. Like I can, I'll go as fast as you want to go,
right,
but to do this sustainably, you need to make this kind of commitment. And so some people get it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
If you want to go get that kind of like one-off massage, I love doing that sometimes myself too. So I'm never like offended or anything. It's just we're working together for a very specific purpose towards a very specific goal, which is that you learn how to do this yourself. So a lot of times the body work is just the way that I get people kind of initiated into these types of practices, because it gets them feeling good, and it also facilitates that nervous emotional release so that we can establish more rapport. Like my nervous system can co-regulate a lot more quickly with theirs through touch than through dialogue or conversation.
Right. I love all that, especially like the language you're speaking is that, man, like as far as an empath goes, it takes a real skill to see somebody as a sovereign individual, and to see somebody as flawed but human, somebody that has preconception and experience behind them, and to not discount that, and to be able to build a treatment plan around that. Especially with touch, especially with body work, there's a lot of stigma, predisposition, preconception. A lot of people, some people respond well, some don't. Some people know how to act in a session, some don't. And we have to just take this role of the observer and be able to sit and just hold all of that and be able to work with it and like mold it like putty, so that we can see somebody through. I'll ask you a question about transference and counter transference in clients in a minute, but why do you call your students?
Oh, that's a great question. I call them students because client felt very transactional to me. Like when I worked in accounting, like I would go out on client sites and it was just very like, to me, students are there to learn.
Yeah.
we're all learning from each other. Really, my students kind of teach me where I need to go. I didn't wake up one day and I was like, I'm going to be a body worker and like self-sex coach for men, like this is a great idea, like just go do that, Missy. It was just really like kind of a natural outgrowth of, my own passions and actually working with students and working with these populations and really just listening to them and understanding like what are their needs.
Yeah.
And that was a bit different than I initially thought it was, but I was like, I don't really see a lot of people building something specifically for that, even though it's a very saturated field, right? It's a very like targeted kind of service. So I'm sorry, what was your question? I just went off a little bit.
No, it's
Can you repeat that?
we're working with students.
Yeah, so students, yeah, so they're there to learn, they're there to educate themselves on their bodies, and that's our purpose. And I feel like we're able to develop more organic relationships that way. It doesn't feel quite as formalized. I appreciate and understand that not all medical licensed providers are able to offer that, but that's kind of why I stay in my own lane and then have this amazing community to refer out to when things get to that point. So I do it as my job as the coach or the teacher, really, to just learn as much as I can and pass that on to my students in the right way and the right time for them.
Cool. I dig it.
Thanks. Yeah.
So you and I are alike in the fact that we're sticklers for language and proper language. I saw a video recently where you broke down the difference between depression and anxiety. I think that was really valuable, really, really important for people to understand and know. What do you think about when you hear that trauma? There's no wrong answer to this. What do you think about when you hear that trauma is stored in the body? Like, what's your reaction to that? When there's so many people that have quips, and quips are there for a reason because they have like some truth to them. But when you hear like quips like the body keeps score or the body stores trauma, like what's your initial reaction to that?
I agree, but I think people grossly overestimate their understanding of trauma. And I know everybody loves this book, The Body Keeps the Score, but I actually found him like really presumptuous in the way that he talked about trauma. So I didn't have a great resonance with that book. There was really I really tried to be open to it and tried to be a good student, just like put my mind aside and my thoughts just to read it how he wanted to present it. I agree with it. The way that, how do I explain this? The way that we work with trauma is very important. And, I obviously, again, don't hold myself out to be a psychotherapist. I don't hold myself out to be a doctor. But what I can offer are, again, somatic practices from a holistic perspective, but also grounded in scientific understanding to create change and also to provide an environment that feels safe for someone to work through that. And so just being able to relate from my own experiences too of trying to get help from my own trauma, I come to an understanding about like how I would want to be treated, and I really try to offer that to my students. So I don't make people explain their trauma stories to me. If it comes up and they want to talk about it, fine. I'm happy to hold that space. I don't even necessarily have to know what's going on, or sometimes what they think is going on is not what's actually going on because they're feeling more of the symptom than the root cause of it. But I'm not going to just go dig into somebody's trauma. So that's why I always say, I don't offer different kinds of body work. I don't differentiate between like, oh, this is a deep tissue massage or this is a Swedish massage. I'm just like, we're just going to do body work and you're going to get what you need based on what we've assessed that you are coming in for, right? So I don't care what method it is. It's going to be the method that works for you. You know what I mean? So sometimes people need something a little bit different, or we'll start to work into one area of the body, and that will, or sometimes like when people are very traumatized, it's that we kind of have to calm down where that inflammation is in the body before we're able to address anything else. So I'll give you an example. One of my students actually came to me for a shoulder imbalance, and he was having a lot of pain in his shoulder, et cetera, former baseball player. but he mentioned that he was getting like regular migraines all the time, and just sitting at a desk like made him start to get migraines. And so if he can't function, then he can't work, then the shoulder is not going to do anything. Plus it's probably related because something's getting triggered in there, because the anatomy is so related to each other. So yeah, it was like we clearly need to address the migraine aspects of things, because he was under a lot of stress. He doesn't like, he didn't even, I don't think he was even really aware of how much he was holding on stress and holding his breath. And I tried to explain to him, I was like, look, your body going into this is a stress response. And so this pain is a constant inflammation and stress response happening in your body. Even though you don't feel stress necessarily, your body is telling you that it feels stress. So we need to calm that down before we can actually go do your shoulders and your hip mobility and like all of that stuff. Because if this gets angry, then it doesn't matter what your hips, like you're not going to go do a hip mobility practice if you have a migraine.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's
Like,
gonna last. That's gonna last all of like 30 seconds, and you're gonna be out.
right. And then the student gets into this guilt shame cycle, especially people who've been traumatized, because they're like, oh, I'm not performing, or I'm not doing what I said I want to do. So I find that motivation is rarely the issue. I find that more often it's my job to like remove obstacles for that person before we're even able to get to that work. And in that process, we're able to develop rapport and understanding such that we can eventually broach something like that. So again, that's why I'm very upfront with my students. I'm like, here's the expectation of what I think it's going to take. We'll, of course, tailor it. I will go as fast as we can go, but not faster than your nervous system can integrate. So I just sit down and explain it to them. And I've not had one student be like, no, that doesn't make sense,
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like people are smart. They want to understand what's going on.
I love that you just said that, like, we're going to go at the speed of your nervous system, no matter what, like that is on any given day. What time do you, I think we've talked about this last time, but like, what time do you dedicate toward your students? What, like, when you say it's going to take as long as it takes, like, have you worked in like a 3-hour session, or have you worked in like an hour session? Like, what's the difference there?
Yeah, I think I mean, I can give a good massage in an hour. I can give a good bodywork session in an hour. But for me, I think I've really been starting to love the 2 and 3 hour sessions. And it sounds like a really long time, but it actually goes by very quickly, because there's usually a lot to talk about, and there's usually a lot that we need to get through and go through. And depending on, again, how severe or complex the case is, I might need to spend 2 hours with them on the table to sufficiently release. And so if I kind of stop halfway through that process, the person's going to feel kind of like better, but incomplete in a way. And so it's preferable that we have the time and the space, if they have the budget for it, to do something like that. So I'm actually going through a little bit of shifts in my business right now, where I kind of want to change the way that I offer my bodywork services. Like, somebody can come in and just get like an hour session with me, and they'll feel good after that. Or they can do something like that for monthly maintenance, totally fine. But what I really want to start offering are like maybe half day or day long intensives, where I just really work with that person more intensively. We kind of go through it all, especially if there's like multiple things, we can just kind of do a very like, focused session on that day. And it's also a deeper experience for them. And I find that to be just so much more effective, first of all, and also poignant for the student, where they start to feel the shift and also see the potential and feel the potential within themselves to get where they want to go.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that's huge and deeply valuable, because so much is going to come up in session.
Yeah.
When things come up in session, you and I are part of some Facebook groups, and I'm sure you see it happening, and as I see it, there's a lot of unfortunately, there's still a lot of boundaries being broken with massage therapists out there, or body workers out there. I think a lot of it comes with, a lot of it comes from boundaries being broken, yes, and then also maybe a misunderstanding of transference and counter transference, and like how there's a middle ground somewhere, like that we have to be able to see people as flawed. They're going to have transference as a normal thing, especially if we bring up emotional things. And, you know, we aren't psychotherapists. We're not here to psychoanalyze
No,
people. But
no,
we aren't here to turn them away either, especially
right.
especially in matters of potential areas where like shame could be built. Where do you think the middle ground is that on that? This is like I don't know how
Tough
to answer this question.
question.
So like if you
If I
how
could
do you
explain this. Yeah, so I'll kind of break that down into two parts. So I'll speak to transference and countertransference. And I think the underlying theme here is about boundaries, like you mentioned.
yeah, absolutely.
I think we have to, I'll speak to the part of the student, speak to the part of the provider. As providers, it's our job to manage the room. If somebody's in our practice or within our, like, even if it's just a Zoom session, I still consider like this is my room, you know, so my room, my rules, right? So like if it doesn't fly with me, it's not gonna happen in my room. So you know, in that way the table's sacred. And also for that reason, it is a safe space for them to let stuff come up, right? So what I do, again, that's why I've kind of formalized as a separate offering. It's like I will, if they need to like kind of talk through some things, that's why I offer the coaching around somatic and sovereign sexuality, where it's like it's okay for you to have these feelings and I return it back to you because it's not mine to take on.
Yes.
Right, I'm here to help you through it. I'm happy to discuss it. Like there's not a lot of like topics anymore that really like kind of phase me, you know what I mean? I can have very like open discussions with my students, and you know, they usually know that I myself identify as like you know, non-binary, femme presenting, bisexual woman, you know what I mean? So they know, and I am very like attuned to myself within that, so it doesn't feel awkward for me to talk about those things with my students within that coaching container. And so I think when they're on the table with respect to doing body work and massage, what I would do is ask them to pay attention to their breathing, because if somebody's really, really paying attention to that, like they're in themselves and having their own experience. And again, like we're energetically connected through that, and I'm helping them move through that experience, but I also know it's not mine to take on. And so if I start to feel myself tense up too, or I feel myself pushing to try to get them to do something, I'm like, well, my ego is starting to
guide the
come
session.
in here. I need to take a step back and just like wait for that next inhale to come, you know? So fortunately, like I see all the time in massage therapy groups, like, oh, this person tried to solicit me or blah, blah, blah. Like I have also been solicited before, but I shut it down pretty quickly. But there's also a way to gracefully navigate that situation. Like one of my students told me the last time, I mean, I didn't even notice, but the last time that I worked on him, he was like, I kind of got like a softie a little bit, but then he started to disclose in some other factors in his relationship that helped me understand that was like just a relaxation response for him, because he trusts me, and like that is one of the only places, if only place he gets outside of his very busy life, that he can just actually like kind of let go. So he's like, I wanted you not to feel embarrassed, but like, you know, my wife and I talked about this, like it's okay, you know.
It's coming forward as a communicable thing, and it's not being shut down or
he's not trying to project it onto me, right? And so like there's space for that, and it's okay that it came up because it didn't go anywhere, right? And so, and he understands that. So I make the boundaries very clear in my practice. I'm not here to do those kinds of, I mean, again, no shade to anybody who does, it's just not what I personally do in my practice. They can find that in other places, but I really do enjoy guiding people back to themselves and saying, even in your sexuality, you can be very deeply rooted and embodied in that. And body work is actually a great way to learn how to receive and give consensual touch. And there's not very many places where we have a really strong education about that in a day-to-day life. So I, again, just view it as an extension of education.
I think that's really huge. I think that's an avenue that you know, as body workers, if we can, we don't have to take the path that you took, but we can certainly look at you as like inspiring, like conversation and being able to like, you know, have room to see people and treat people in a new way, in a new paradigm. And
like don't and like your safety is always paramount. So
Yeah.
like never put yourself in a unsafe position.
Yeah.
But the reason I feel safe is because the container is so clear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've made it that way very intentionally. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so I think, you know, I think people are really grateful to have that kind of outlet. And again, like it wasn't something that I just woke up and decided to do one day because a student tried to hit on me. It was like I took a very deep personal interest in sexuality and did a lot of self-study in
Right.
that area and worked with a lot of like, you know, very you know, it's hard to find teachers who have integrity, but I really was lucky to find those kinds of teachers and help me embody my own understanding in that. And so again, I just view it as an extension of here's more somatic holistic tools. Like breathing and body work are very interrelated for me. And so, you know, I may not be saying like, oh, we're going to do a tantric breathing technique today. You know, they don't have to know that. It doesn't matter. All they need to know is that we're going to move through some things, and that's going to help them cycle their energies and help them feel more centered, right? And so maybe a little bit of fire comes up, and maybe then we just let it soften back away. And if people have been traumatized before or have not had that kind of holding, for them, that's enough. That's better than any happy ending you could ever give somebody.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's not, you know, a happy ending is not going to solve somebody's loneliness. It's not going to solve their imbalances or their core issues. So I always say we're coming in for a specific purpose. You know, we can work within these boundaries and so on and so forth. Actually, I had another student, I'll give you another example because it is a very gray area and people, there's a lot of charge around it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of controversy too. So one of my students came to me, he didn't really like give me a bunch of background on himself beforehand. But you know, he revealed that he has cancer, but he didn't say what kind of cancer until maybe after like 4 or 5 months of working together, right? And then just recently he revealed that it was testicular cancer. And so he actually he said he was having some pain, and I was just like, oh, okay, I understand. So I mean, I obviously didn't go all up in there, but I was like, let's try something different. So I put him on his side and we did a lot of side release work. I went into the iliacus, you know, we did a little bit of adductors, and he was happy, you know, it's fine. It's just like that's not what he's bringing it up for, you know what I mean? But that is a very real like medical need, and who does he go to for that, you know?
Exactly.
So right. And
who's he gonna bring
who's
this
he gonna
up to?
tell?
Yeah.
Yeah, like his doctor will just tell him to take some pain pills.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we know as much as, you know, like all, you know, anybody who's energetically attuned knows how interrelated all of these energy centers are with how, like you were mentioning earlier, we store pain and trauma in our bodies, and cancer is it's a form of trauma, right? So yeah, should he not be able to have access to treatment just because of the nature of the disease that he got? I don't, you know, that's a difficult question to answer based on how the industry is now. And should massage therapists take that on? I don't think so necessarily, but I think there's still things within our toolkit and ways that we can navigate these situations to both bring relief, bring comfort, and bring safety to ourselves and to the student that we're working with.
That's an amazing way to put it. That really is. And it's such an interesting and it's a topic that's not danced around a lot and talked about a lot. And like, that's why I really appreciate you taking it on and talking about it. So this year, it's been an interesting, tough year for body workers. It's, man, like some of us have been deemed like non-essential. We've had to move through that whole, like state by state has like told us that we are or aren't different things. It's been chaotic. A mess. It's chaotic. So chaotic. It's so bad. But one thing we're definitely seeing is that there's really a premium on getting body work, like soft tissue therapy, touch, movement, like dance coaching, pole, like my friend pole dances, like there's
I really want to learn that more.
She's out in Phoenix. But
that'd be amazing.
I'll do that. So I guess what I was saying is like, I guess what I want to like ask is like, where do you see the state of the industry? Where do you see like, because there have been, I mean, we've gotten destroyed by massage clinics, like as a whole, like our I'm just saying this as a body worker. Our industry has taken hit after hit, and now we see a premium on our work. How do you see us like elevating and coming back in a different way from all of this? Because I think it's there.
Yeah, so I am understanding your question as like where do I see the industry going, and how can we continue to show up and offer value while still preserving ourselves and staying intact and sane and all of that? Is that the question?
Yeah, no, that's
okay.
I do a roundabout question, and you've locked in the specifics. So
okay, just making sure I understand. So yeah, so this is more of a business sided question. The last question is more of like a ethics, boundaries sided question. All great questions, by the way. So on the business side of things, I'll talk to a little bit of what I've experienced briefly. I had to close my office, and then I moved into another office, and then had to close that office, and then unfortunately my father got really sick with pancreatic cancer, so then I had to close my entire business and just move and stop my life. And so I feel like I'm just now getting back to, I feel like I'm just relaunching a brand new business right now, even though everything has, kind of continued throughout the pandemic, but just in a different way for me. I've actually decidedly not taken on as many students. I know not everybody is in a place to do that, but I did all the documentation and paperwork and all of that to get government assistance. So that's actually what floated my business through this period. And since my personal expenses were relatively low, I thought, I made it, but barely.
Yeah, I actually feel you on that. Like, I did the same thing. So
yeah, I think a lot of us are in that position, and now we're faced with, okay, but how do we pay this money back? Like, we've made it through this period, but how do we pay it back? So to speak to your points, I think we need to value our services, because despite if the medical field recognizes it or not, people will pay for body work, and they'll pay for really good body work too. So I would say the most important thing is to tend to yourself, because I know if I'm feeling really scattered, it's very difficult for me to show up and be present for that person. And so, for people doing this full time, I really feel for you, because you kind of have to do it. Otherwise, you don't make money. As you know, when there's no students, there's no money. This is like your sole stream of income. So what I've really focused on this year is pivoting my business to a lot of online focus first. So things that can be taught online.
Yes,
I am starting to teach online. So like during the pandemic, I taught like a soothing self-massage workshop, and I was so like, I'd never really done a workshop before, and I was so surprised that people from 5 different countries came, and I was just like, what, this is amazing, and it just got great feedback, and it made me realize that you have skills that can be offered in a multitude of ways, right? And even if you have to take a step back, like say maybe you go work at a chiropractor's office for a little bit just to have like that more solid income. I know that's usually a pay cut from working for yourself privately. Like that's what I did too. For a few months there, I was working at a pain and acupuncture clinic in Beverly Hills, and it was like, a quarter of what I usually charge my students. But I was just going in and doing hour massages, and so I could kind of detach myself from it a little bit while still keeping enough time for me to build up my own clientele. Right. So, and then with the online courses and stuff too, it's like it just diversified, and I had different streams of income. So like with all of it together, I was able to make it work. So I think you guys just need to be creative and just realize that one-on-ones are not the only way to do it. And the more you can get away from discounting for drop-in sessions or discounting for volume sessions, the better it's going to be for you and the better quality client you're going to attract. So I really tried to get away from discount. I do offer some discounts, but it's usually like if they pay in full for a package. Right. Because then they're saying, I commit to this, and I say, okay, then I can give you a little bit more leeway, right? Because you're making this 3 to 6 month commitment with me for, again, this specific purpose, not just to give you volume of sessions, because people, they don't know what the benefit of a volume of session is until you say or explain it to them. Like if you just say, oh, I'll give you the 10th one free, they're like, well, why should I care to
Why
give
should,
you the
yeah,
9,
that's it.
right?
Yeah. Like why, like the whole concept of treatment plan goes out the window then. Cause then it's just like,
Right.
then the whole, yeah, like, yeah, you're right. Like the value, you need to be able to communicate the value of the work, and it's very subtle stuff. Um,
It is. And so it could be, for example, like, the easiest example to use is low back pain. Okay, so you're coming in for low back pain. This first session that we had, I saw that, I felt XYZ, your QL is really tight. I think a little bit of work on the erectors is going to help that. We'll do some breathing, and then maybe we'll do some hip work, and I'll show you some stretches. That's going to take us about 3 sessions, I think. I offer 10 and 20 session packages. So I would explain to them, after those 3 sessions, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take you off the table, and I'm going to teach you the actual exercises so you can learn how to do that yourself. And then by the 10th session, you won't need to come back.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's the best kind of client retention too, is like,
it is.
We're going to treat you now. We're going to get you through. If something comes along down the line, we'll do the same thing.
Exactly.
And we'll do it in either the same way or a different way. But I don't need to lock you in. I need to lock you in now, but I don't need to, like, we'll keep this a relationship and not not a transactional one.
Right. I mean, because and that way you're not really selling anybody on anything. It's like, I just offer the information to them and let them make a decision.
Right.
And it's like, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I would want to do with you. You're more than welcome to go get other opinions about it or see other providers if those work better for you. Like, I don't feel badly on myself about it because I'm confident in what I offer and the results I get for students. So I would say, if you've not had experience in formulating something like that and bringing somebody through that kind of experience, my challenge would be to you to figure out what structure is actually going to benefit your client's needs the most. They're looking to us to help guide them through these experiences. So it's actually a disservice to your students to just kind of like leave them out, like hanging out to dry, because you're making them do all of the work.
Right.
So I try to be very, very detailed and very upfront. Like, here's the expectations. I work with a lot of chronic pain patients, and again, people who have severe trauma. And so that's the other thing I'll sit down and explain is like, look, I understand everybody's budget is different, but if you could give me this little bit of time, it's going to be better for you because you will have time to integrate the kind of work that we do. It's not just like a one and done thing. And I'm not saying that to try to get more money out of you. I'm saying that so you can get better results from the money you are investing, the time you are investing into this. And again, people are smart. I don't know why so many providers seem to think that, just because we're working in trauma and somatics and like, there's so much stuff on Instagram now that people want to understand and they want to know what's going on in their bodies. And so if you can help them come to a more comfortable place and understanding why they're feeling the way that they feel and how they can move into a better place, like, you become their hero. It's not about being the hero, but to them, it's like you've solved a great mystery of life for them.
You've given them information without without overlording a premium on it. You're able to give them something to work with. I love how you said that people aren't stupid. They want to know about themselves on a deeper level. And they're going to invest in themselves if you gave them the information they need.
Yeah, and I feel like it's my job to explain that information to them in a way that they can understand. So throwing out a bunch of jargon at people, I'll be like, okay, this is, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. Like, you don't need to be like anatomy master. And, it's helpful to explain that to people, but, to go into a little bit more detail of like, oh, your shoulder range of motion is, so like, what range of motion? Right. So how is the shoulder, right? So be specific, but people generally understand what's going on because they're feeling it within themselves, right? So I just don't think that people are stupid. If they need a little bit more time to learn or understand things, or if you need to explain it in different ways, that's your job as a provider, right? I
think that's my forever lesson. Is I've always been working backwards from that. I've always when I was at Equinox, I was always giving people almost too much information. So, so it's like, how do I make
Yeah.
this? How do I make this tangible? Yeah.
I usually like to that point, just to make it tangible for them, I usually try to relate it to something that they love doing, you know,
Cool.
or something in their life, right? So again, if it's a basketball player, I'll relate it to basketball. I'll be like, okay, you know, again, just to use a shoulder example, like, you know, your supraspinatus is having pain in this range of motion to this range of motion. So we're going to start you with this exercise, and you stick with that for about 3 weeks, then, you know, by the end of about 2 months, accumulating on top of this foundational exercise, you'll start to be able to feel better and playing your games without pain again. They're like, oh, that makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
it can be that simple.
It's life. It's life. It's like
Mhm.
we're giving back to their lives.
Exactly.
We're inserting a new experience, a new chapter, so that they can keep doing what they love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let people decide, you know, it's their bodies, and that's just an honoring and a respect, deep respect of their autonomy
Yeah.
and deep respect of their sovereignty. And so many people have had their bodily autonomy and sovereignty violently taken away from them, by force or traumatic circumstance. And so again, you're teaching them that it's okay to
Yeah.
make their own decisions, and
Man,
they can trust themselves.
that's so good. Like when I think of somatic, when I think of somatics, like it's such a broad term. When I think of somatics, it's giving people back agency. It's just
Mhm.
really giving back people back agency over mind and body. It's like,
Yeah.
there we are. Like we've you know, we're not going to solve the puzzle, but damn, we're going to give you 4 corners, and then you can go build it on your own, you know.
We work within this framework. I really feel that discipline is one of the highest forms of love, because you know, you're essentially providing a structure for in which someone can work within. And so if the structure isn't working for them, then it's probably something that you need to change,
Right.
not them, you
Right.
know. So there's
Yeah.
just a very much a humbling of your ego
Yeah.
in that, you know. So you just, like, it takes a while to learn how to meet people where they're at, and
It
that
makes
takes a
sense.
very skilled provider. So so yeah, again, I don't hold myself out as a doctor or anything like that. I have all those people to refer out to, but I find that my students come to me after they've tried all those things because it hasn't worked for them. But the way that I set up this system and a structure for them addresses on a more holistic level what's not being addressed by any of those other providers. So you do offer a valuable service in that way, and I don't think that's out of scope of practice for massage therapists to put something together as it pertains to manual
Yeah.
therapy for the same reason.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Yes.
This has been like really, this has been awesome. It's been really educational for me. Um, uh, I guess, what was I gonna say? Where can people find you? Just so we can get that out of the way. But yeah,
Yeah,
where are you?
come
Where are you?
connect with me. I'm at Instagram is where I usually like to hang out, and also online. Both are The Body Intuitive, INTUITIVE.
Nice.
Sometimes it's a little tricky, lots of I's and T's and things. Yeah, so The Body Intuitive on all platforms basically, and I do offer a free consult, but I also have like a lot of like interviews and content, and I'm going to be putting out some more blogs and stuff too. So I'm really excited to dive more deeply into this area. And you know, you are also very inspiring to me in the sense of like how much valuable content that you put out to your students. So I'm just honored to be a part of that today. And I also want to, you know, create that for my own community. And so I love how we just parry off of each other so well.
Totally. Thank you for being an educator above anything else. You know, knowledge is, you know, how we make the world go round. So like, thank you again for coming on. Thank you for covering like so many different topics, and yeah, I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Eddie. Yeah, and then if anybody has like questions about like their bodywork business or like how to put together a treatment plan, like you can reach out to me too. Like I love helping people like, you know, just ascend better, because we all want to be sustainable in
Yeah.
our practices, right? And so the more we can uplift each other and kind of like raise the bar on ourselves without it being a crushing kind of pressurized feeling. Again, it's like we're challenged to embody the things that we teach to our clients before we give it to them, right? So if we're feeling comfortable, grounded, strong in our offering, it's going to come through in your client experience. And then you can charge higher prices. You can
Yes.
do things like put out workshops. You can do things like offer a specialty, you know, so it's not just, oh, I just do Swedish and deep tissue and acupressure and all this. It's like, no, I'm very, you know, my thing is, you know, holistic, somatic, sexuality, trauma release, rehabilitative mobility, but maybe your thing is really like the energetic and you love Reiki and you love energy healing and all that side of things. So just be that, you know, and do that really, really, really well.
Lean into your strength and lean into what you know is going to like lean in, like go
Yeah.
really, really hard into that thing that you know is going to work. So
Yeah, if you're making a lot, like if your clients keep coming back to you for it, or they keep asking you for it, I mean, that's how my coaching practice evolved. They asked me for it. And so I just formalized something that was
Cool.
already there. Does that make sense? So
It does.
you don't have to completely reinvent yourself from scratch just because the pandemic rolled through. It might just be a tiny little refinement and doubling down on the things that you know already really, really work. So
Cool.
anyway, I don't mean to go off.
No, that's inspiring. That's really inspiring. And I think more of us need to hear that. So
yeah.
Thank you, Missy.
You're already there.
We're already there.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Eddie, and blessings for the rest of your day. Take care, and I hope our paths cross in person so
soon. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Connect me with your friend, your pole friend.
I will do. I'll do that. I'll
Okay.
do that now. Cool.
All right,
Have a good rest of the day. Much love.